What is a biblical genre? A genre is a style of writing. Each style of genre communicates in very different ways. The three main types of genre are narrative, poetry, and prose discourse. Narratives make up 43% of the Bible. Narrative tells stories which are the most universal form of human communication. 5 tips when reading narratives are: read theologically, not moralistically. This means to read the Bible with a focus on God. We often read narratives to find moral examples to follow, when our focus should ultimately be on God. He is the hero in every biblical story. Identify the setting. Knowing the time, place, and environment in which the story takes place helps us to better understand what is going on. Who are the important characters? Who is the hero? Who is the villain? All characters in the Bible are real people who compromised just like us. Most Bible stories tell about the time in a character's life when they were at the end of themselves and how they ultimately trusted God. Trace the plot. What is the setting at the beginning of the story? Who are the characters? What conflicts need to be addressed? How is the conflict addressed? What is the outcome? If we don't understand the plot line, we don't understand the story. Look for repetition. Are there any repeating phrases in the story? If so, these can be very significant for understanding what the author wants us to see. Poetry has a different purpose than a story and is 33% of the Bible. Poetry uses metaphors and symbolism and invites us into an experience to ponder ideas slowly and from many different angles. Poetry provokes emotion and imagination and helps you view things from different perspectives. Biblical poetry is generally structured as couplets. Couplets are 2 short lines that are carefully worded and placed beside each other. The first line makes the basic statement, and the second develops it by completing, deepening, or contrasting the thought. Different types of poetry are songs or psalms, wisdom, and prophets. Psalms is the largest collection of poetry in the Bible. There are 150 psalms broken into 5 sections. Section 1 and 2 explores the complicated story of David and his royal family. Section 3 tells us about the tragedy of Israel's exile and the downfall of David's royal line. Sections 4 and 5 rekindle the hope for the Messiah, a new temple, and God's kingdom on the other side of exile. The Psalms poetically retell the entire biblical story. Wisdom books are meant to be reflective. Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes are collections of wise sayings meant to shape the moral and ethical lives of their readers. Prophets. Passionate resistance poetry is filled with wild and cosmic imagery. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel are just 3 of the 15 prophets who have their own books in the Bible. Biblical prophets are way more than fortune tellers. They were Israelites who had a radical encounter with God's presence and were commissioned to go and speak on God's behalf. Prose discourse is nonfiction and makes up 24% of the Bible. It is not narrative, it is not literature, it is not poetry. It's essays and articles. It's like hearing someone give a speech. It's the quickest way to convey information. Prose discourse is found in the law collections, wisdom literature, and the letters written by the apostles. Writers who use prose discourse style will present an argument to their readers, hoping that their response will be a change in behavior and the way they think. Prose discourse often uses words like therefore, if, then, until, so that, rather, as a result, and because, to emphasize an action, purpose, or consequence that will urge the reader to act. These key words introduce dependent clauses that would have very little meaning or context by themselves. Ephesians 4:13 and 14 gives us an example of the prose discourse style of writing. Until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Every biblical book is a unique piece of writing that belongs to one or more genres, and paying close attention to the genre is essential for interpretation.